maybe I can start by this is the second week of the masterclass program. And, what's also important at the end of the masterclass program that, everyone is like, doing their KPIs, right? And so what are the KPIs, just to reiterate that you remember them? What's important is like that at the end of the 6 weeks, those KPIs are done. So that basically means like if you maybe fallen behind right now and you still need to work on your, for example, like organizing events, you can still do that. The most important is that you at the end of the program have reached all your KPIs, right? And so what are the KPIs again, right? Just that you remember them. So one of the KPIs is like 25 new leads, right? This is basically 6 events is the next event, the next KPI. 25 posts on social media, and 36 micro meditations, right? And then the last KPI is basically about the future of economy. It's like that you can present it in 2 minutes, like a 2-minute pitch, right? And I would also encourage you, this is also a little bit about networking the session, that you also reach out to other peers, right? Like to other students who are there, that you reach out to them and connect with them, right? And also that you kind of like do your group calls, you engage with your group. The group will be reshuffled in a week, right? So you will be allocated to a new group. So you meet again like 5 new people. And so what we are doing right now, we're working on improving the LMS system. So we're working on that right now. That will be launched in like probably around like 1 or 2 weeks. We have like a new LMS system, and and then it's also from Yip. So Yip sent out like a survey from the Goldman Institute, and I would like highly encourage you to do this survey. All right, so now we're around like 70 people. All right, great. So I would just like to introduce Stefan, who is like a dear friend, and he is like in the startup scene for a very, very long time. So he started his first startup with 19. They had like over 10 million a year like in turnover. Then he did like a social network where he had like over 12 million users. And now in this current startup where he's working since 2010, it's Itembase. It's like a startup in the e-commerce space. Also very successful. They raised a lot of money. They have a really long journey. And why Stefan is also here, it's also because he's one of the best networkers I know, and he's really systematic about his networking approach. And he will probably also tell a little bit about this. All right, so give a warm round of applause to Stefan.
Thank you very much. I might have to just ask a question whether you can hear me well. I have been experiencing some cutoffs with the Wi-Fi, so in case it cuts off, and maybe also stop me after a minute if it starts cutting off, because then I'll have to dial in. So Sasha, in the meantime, if you can send me the dial in the chat or somewhere, that would be good, because then I can be prepared. But otherwise, I'll basically, let me just see. I'll share my presentation. Anything I need to think about in terms of housekeeping or anything like that? Good.
Not really, no.
Let me see if I can get my screen shared here. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Very good. Yes, so as Sasha mentioned, my name is Stefan Jørgensen. I'm the CEO and founder of Itembase. I am from Denmark, so a small country in the Nordics, a small cold country. So basically, if you're an entrepreneur or want to build any kind of larger, meaningful business, that's very hard to do in a small country like Denmark. We've lost every war and everything in the whole history of the country, except one thing. So essentially, as an entrepreneur, you have one strategy available, which is the only one that was ever successful to Danish people, which is conquering like the Vikings. So that's essentially what what we're also doing, I've been doing with all my companies, we always went international, and that means you need to overall be quick, you need to be aggressive, and you need to go places that nobody's ever kind of gone before. So we're doing that with Itembase today. We've done that with the other companies I've been involved with, and I think the overall philosophy just frees you up, because you basically don't have to think so much about all the danger. You can basically go all out for it. The whole philosophy of the Vikings. So as Sasha mentioned, after founding and selling a couple of my first companies, I ended up in Spain, where I basically lived for some years. And obviously you might think, sitting around on the beach, and I also at some point in time was doing that, figuring out what to do next, figuring out how to basically, what program I should sell online. No, of course that's a joke. It's not really what we were doing. But you see a lot of that online today. A lot of the kind of get rich quick stuff, and you might think a lot about that, taking part in programs like this. You're thinking like, where's the money actually at, and is this curriculum we're going through here even any good? Are there any special assignments? I'm not even sure you have that on this program, but there might be. What are all these things I need to do? Actually, people should be pitching me, which I am right now, so that's a good thing, instead of you basically going out and presenting to the world. And is this really what I want to do? Do I really want to kind of go out there and conquer the world and run my own business or achieve my other goals? Should I basically be more comfortable in what I'm doing? But if you're founding a business, it is a Viking story, right? It's not a cooking show. It's not a comedy. It's not a love story or a get rich quick scheme. It's basically an action movie. It is supposed to be hard, and it will be hard, and there will be battles that are not comfortable, and some people might die, not literally, but kind of falling off your company because they don't fit the goals or whatever it is anymore. So in the end, what a lot of these things are about, I think, is you need to basically think less and do much more, right? So don't worry so much. Don't consider all kind of making quick assessments that follow your vision, and then testing things out. That's much more basically gets you much further, much quicker than sitting around and thinking and worrying, and should I call that customer, and should I do this, and all these different things, and then you never get to do it actually. But let me get back to the beach in Spain for a second. So after I sold my last company, which was the social network Sasha mentioned, I was sitting in Spain, and I was wondering what do I do next? And I had a house, and we actually decided to move to Berlin at that point in time. And I had a house, and this is probably how my desk looked. This is how my whole house looked. So I had all of these things lying around in my basement and in my office and all kind of places. So I'd have 5 mobile phones and computers everywhere and stuff like that. And I thought that's actually kind of a waste, because I didn't even know I had it, and why do I even have that anymore? So I thought, having done e-commerce before and having basically done a social network, I thought, why don't we have a digital identity of everything we own? Just like we have now a digital identity of ourselves, of our friends, which means we can do a lot of very data-driven, very nice things with our own profiles online. Why don't we have profiles of everything we own? Then we can actually make sure that we don't have 3 phones lying around in the basement, because they could be recycled. They could be sold to somebody else that could actually use them, which would actually happen much more if it would all be digitalized. I could insure it. I could basically give it to charity. There's a lot of things that could happen. So that's in the end our mission as Itembase. That's from day one. We basically went on to a mission to say, how can we actually how can we create more sustainable consumption? How can we basically connect the whole supply chain together, from the manufacturing of the products to the recycling, maybe even understanding what were the different ingredients that were put into a mobile phone. So whenever it has to be recycled, you know what's in there already, so it can be done properly, right? And our goal was then, over time, has become more and more clear, we need to connect all the players in the supply chain over one standard. of product data and transactional data. So that's what that's our mission with Itembase, and we had to go out obviously and validate that mission, and validate how do we do that. So we basically founded an Itembase, and I went out and the first thing I basically did, I posted or I created one landing page, and that basically would show one of my products and a inventory of that one product, and I posted on Facebook, and I said basically I just added this chandelier, which it was, to my Itembase collection, and I posted that on Facebook, and I basically measured how many people would click on that Facebook post to kind of validate, is this something people are interested in? And it turned out enough people clicked on that. So we basically, second part, we went out and we called different merchants to kind of figure out how do we get this in front of as many people as possible? How do we integrate it into supply chain? There are a lot of different companies in supply chain. We called different brands, we called different insurance companies that might want to kind of get an idea of what you own to help insure it better. We called UNICEF and some other charities that would be interested in getting these products donated. We out of some of the merchants we talked to in our network, we basically then went up integrating a couple of merchants, and by this time we didn't have any product yet, we didn't have anything yet. So we basically built a banner that came into the checkout. So whenever somebody would buy, like in this case, a chair in this store, they would in the checkout see a banner that says, do you want to store your chair that you just purchased in your Itembase collection? So you basically have access to your receipts and all your data around that purchase forever. And we would measure how many people did that. And again, we had on the other side just a landing page that would show basically a inventory of the products that came in. So we at that point didn't have any product yet. Based on that, the data was, or the conversion rates were satisfying enough. So we went ahead and built a plugin that would actually now work, that we could install into several stores. And then we would measure the conversion at a larger scale, essentially. And then we understood, okay, this is actually working. We have to build a team. So we partnered up with some local kind of company builders and investors. See, there's something in the chat. Sasha, are you monitoring the chat? I assume you are, so let's say that. Great.
I'm doing it.
Good. So we partnered up with some local investors. At this time, I was living in Berlin. We raised a couple of $100,000 to basically now scale out the technology and the team. And just when we raised that money, and we're at this time in Berlin, a company that did something very similar in the US raised $10 million. And we're thinking that's kind of strange, because our technology and our mission is much more comprehensible. So do you, and they were called slice. So do you actually want the pizza, or do you just want a slice? We thought you want the pizza, you want like Itembase, the whole thing. But we also realized that it's strange that they can raise 10 million, you only raised 200,000 here in Berlin, in Germany at that point in time. So we thought we'll take on the Viking hat and we'll actually go where we need to go to make this happen. So we went to San Francisco and basically participated at that point in time in a pitching competition, which we had to apply for with different video pitches, just like. And I would then basically fly there. On the day before I flew there, we had the final practice. And in my slides, just like I have my slides now, I had my Vikings in the slides. And the guy who was in charge of the conference basically told me, you know what? You need to wear a Viking helmet on stage. And I told him, like, oh my God, you're crazy. It's crazy. Do that. I'm a European. We don't do that kind of bullshit. But I flew there, and long story short, I actually didn't bring my Viking helmet, but a couple of things happened on the conference, which I can tell you about another time. And I ended up wearing the Viking helmet on stage, and I ended up also winning that pitching competition, which won us some additional investors. And since that day, I've always been wearing Viking helmet, which you might also see here in the background for any presentation I'm doing, because in the end it works. It makes everything more fun. People can relate more to you, and that's a very important thing in business. So the conclusion on that, if you develop, and it doesn't matter if you do build a business or whatever it is you do, if you need to tell your story. People relate to stories. They don't relate to so much to facts and all these kind of things. You need to basically tell a story that's moving, that basically has movement in it. People understand things in movements and not in static facts, essentially. So let's move on to the next stage. Now we're in San Francisco. We had raised some more capital. We had a product. We had won a pitching competition in San Francisco, the kind of the pinnacle of technology. And the next day I had scheduled a meeting with one of the top VCs in the world here. You see a couple of them here. And I got there, and basically I was totally high because I just won that competition. And I basically talked to the lady, and I asked her, you want me to do the kind of the pitching presentation from yesterday because I actually won, or do you want the standard investor pitch? And I basically was like, yeah, let's do the pitch with the Vikings in them. And I said, the only strategy that works for Danish people is, and then I made a pause, and she was like, yeah, what is it? So you can imagine that completely fell through. So I had to fly back to Germany to actually focus on my business instead. So I thought, we need a bigger team. I got some, we got an office, we got some more participants. We need bigger boats so we can sail further. We need a bigger team here, so we hired some more people to acquire more merchants. We got some better investors on board. We got a better board set up to govern the company, and we participated now in another basically accelerator that would help German companies go to Silicon Valley. And we onboarded 1,000 merchants that will basically show our technology in their checkout to basically achieve what our mission overall is. And we thought, that's great. Now we have some of that growth that all the venture capital companies want. We have some hockey stick growth, and we flew back to San Francisco to basically show everybody what we had achieved. Unfortunately, companies over there or investors over there, they told us that's not a hockey stick, that's a toothpick. You need to do much better than that. So I had to fly back to Germany and keep building on the company. So we could achieve some more. So learning from that, there are no silver bullets in this. You cannot just from my perspective, basically go for or think that you can achieve the impossible by doing some I add a couple of investors and I add a better board and we do this and this. You need to have the real work behind it, and I'm going to say we didn't do that, but we just needed to do more of that than we expected on our own. So there needs to go a lot of hard work into any kind of business you're building. And that's something I've experienced multiple times over the years now. So now I had to actually build a right business, a real business. So we went out and we continued hiring more salespeople. We now onboarded 10,000 merchants. We were featured on AngelList as a hip startup, and we got a lot of inbound from investors in the company. We went back to San Francisco again, and the day before I had to meet with basically another investors. I ended up at the conference. I've won. After that, I had to pitch to some of the top investors again, and this time I was prepared. So I prepared a long presentation, 40 slides with all the details, growth, all of these different things in there. And I went there and I didn't come with my pitching presentation, but a real investor presentation. And I put basically in the meantime, we had achieved 100,000 merchants that onboarded. So I also had the hockey stick growth. I put the slide, the front page slide of the presentation on the wall to start the conversation off, which is this slide. So basically Itembase, the online inventory for everyone and everything, and then the Viking style stuff. And what ended up happening, we didn't go through any of the other slides in the presentation. The investors just focused on this, and then they basically went into detail. And then they asked me very, very shortly after we started, how do you get to 1 million shops? Now you have 100,000, that's very sweet and everything. How do you get to 1 million shops? And I was very surprised. I know we were achieving good growth here, but 1 million shops, if we would say that, have told that was our goal to anybody in Europe, they would have fallen off their chair. So we didn't even dare to put that in there in our presentations. So I was wondering, why 1 million shops? And the investors were basically telling me, but if you don't want 1 million, would you even want to build this business? And of course, I realized, okay, that's correct. So I had to flow back to Germany and basically realign with my team and set some bigger goals. And that's a key learning for everything you do. I think for me, I've experienced now over the years. You can focus on a lot of problems, and there's a lot of things you can solve every single day. There's not a lack of problems coming in. So what you should focus on is you should focus on getting some bigger problems, because if you get bigger problems, all the smaller problems disappear. It gets much clearer. Everything gets more clearer. So if you have a specific goal, either you increase the goal a lot, or you focus on what is the biggest problem I can actually attack, or you decrease the time frame in which you basically want to achieve that goal. By doing that thought experiment, and that was what these venture capitalists basically were trying to do with me, and why they didn't go into any details on the presentation. By doing that thought experiment, a lot of things will get a lot clearer, right? So instead of thinking, oh, I need to call, like, I think, what did Sasha say, like call 25 or get 25 people or something like that. In the next week, instead of thinking that, or instead of thinking I need to have 10 customers in the end of the month, or 100 customers by the end of the year, or maybe even 20, you might want to think about what would it take for me to get to my biggest goals I can get in 10% of the time. Or what would it take to do 10 times as many customers, essentially. That will make you think in a completely different way and come up with solutions that you won't see if you just focus on the small problems, essentially. And I've experienced that many times now, which is also why it's super important to have a lot of conversations with a lot of people that have achieved a lot of things and have different perspectives on life and overall. Now, after we achieved what we achieved so far, we went back, we set some bigger goals, and now it's time to turn our business into a robust business. It was still a startup with like some scalability and full kind of startup mode, not a lot of processes going on. So we basically decided the way to achieve the 1 million or 10 million merchants was to basically to develop the company into an integration platform as a service. I won't bother you on the details with that, but essentially we got some Fortune 500 customers to basically join that technology, which would give us hundreds of thousands of merchants. We would basically be the kind of the technology layer underneath the whole e-commerce space. We got some experienced enterprise people from the Valley that had done a lot of big companies before. After getting these companies, we thought everything was fine with these new investors and team members. But we got a kind of a reality check, because one of our biggest clients, or actually our biggest client, came back and they told us, we're changing our website. We're like, yeah, great, okay. Thanks for informing us. Like, just shoot us back an email in 2 weeks when you're ready to kind of go with the project. And then they're like, yeah, I don't think you work with a Fortune 50 company yet, have you? We're like, why do you say that? Yeah, it doesn't take 2 weeks to change your website. It takes 2 years to change your website. So obviously you can imagine I had to fly back to Germany and make new plans again. So the last part, and I'm not going to bother you now anymore with the flight back and forth. The last part here is basically, no matter what you do and whatever you achieve, it's all about the persistence. If you have the vision clear in your mind, if you have a clear vision to go for, there's a lot of different ways to get there, and you basically just need to be persistent. So that's the main thing in achieving anything, I would say, in business or in. Just be persistent. Bad things are going to happen. You can't do anything about it. Just make sure that you keep going for the good things. So by now, hopefully, we can put a marker on with Itembase or some of the other things we're doing on the Viking World Tour here some point in time. And for you guys, building a company or doing any project in life basically comes with a commitment to that project. It's not a get rich quick scheme. It basically means you need to think less and do more. You need to tell your story to everybody as often as possible. There are no silver bullets, and you need to get yourself some bigger problems and then just be persistent. And then I'm sure that of the whole unit masters in however many years, so you can tell me your battle stories. Me basically get here. So I expect that in 8 years' time you'll have a lot of battle stories to explain as well, and I'll be happy to be there and hear it. That's it from me so far, and now Q&A. So I'll jump off the sharing here and be happy to answer any questions.
First of all, Stefan, thanks for this great presentation. So everyone, so Yip just posted a link where you can directly ask your questions, so I can see them and then I would ask them to Stefan. I would start off in the meantime. So Stefan, also kind of like networking, right? Maybe you can say like,
Sure.
1-2 sentences about like, how you approach networking and what is your system you're using?
Yeah, so I'll give you a little bit of a background. So when I was 19, no, I was younger than that, but I was sitting in the countryside in Denmark, and there we didn't know where an investor was, we didn't know what business was, we didn't know anything. We just got a connection to the internet. And we're doing on consumer businesses, which you can do like that, but we're always having trouble getting kind of the talent and a lot of things like that, getting the right. We didn't really know we had those problems, but it was always hard. So what I realized when I basically went in business, when I moved to Berlin, I had understood that the things that we were missing because we didn't have the right network. I moved to Berlin. The first thing I started capturing all the information on every person I would meet, and I realized from much easier to remember a person if I can remember kind of the surroundings when I met the people. So I would basically, whenever I would go somewhere or meet people, I would basically go back and I would note it down in an Excel sheet, and I would say, unit masters, and then 12th of November 2020, and then I would like put that as the event, and I would note down all the people that I met. Like, okay, so it's on here: Thomas, Aline, Patrick, Gabrielle. Apologies. I would note that down if they had it, which in this case not a lot of people had yet. On their LinkedIn, I would connect them on LinkedIn, and if they didn't have LinkedIn because we're in Germany, I would note them down on Sing. So I basically, and then what I would do, invite everybody to my home, which again in Germany, it is different in different countries, but in Germany it turned out, and Sasha, maybe you can correct me, a lot, I think. So they're like, it's only for really friends. And we went here, and like within a week of moving here, we had a party with 30 people, and 2 weeks after another party with 30 people. And that's how I met Sasha. That's how a lot of the people that I met from back then, we had parties at our home within a month after moving here. I all of a sudden I knew 200, which all have companies now and stuff like that. And I had still have the Excel sheets where I can see like, oh, that's right, that's the guy who was there, that's the guy, and then you can kind of remember in your head where you met them, right? At least I can do that. So I'm in that regard more of a visual, or I don't know what it is actually, kind of guy. That's helped me a lot because I essentially kind of have an idea of what's going on. I can always go back and see who did I even meet. And obviously it's a little bit hard now to keep doing that because I meet so many people right now, but I've tried to basically use still the method through either now an Airtable or through LinkedIn, because a lot of more people have connected LinkedIn account. I was lucky to have an early start with LinkedIn, even though it wasn't that early, because I have a lot of connections, and that gives a lot of advantages now on LinkedIn because I have so many connections. And if you use that, some of the things that LinkedIn, whenever I get the chance, I try to kind of like write up some kind of personal story on LinkedIn, which is again about telling my story, so people that professional, where I know LinkedIn is a professional network, but I try to make it less professional. It's still a professional topic, but less kind of polished and just more whatever real, because that is what people typically relate to. Does that answer your question, Sasha?
Yeah, that's great. So you, unfortunately, connection is sometimes like not the best, and unfortunately, we don't have we have a dial-in for this Zoom call. You need to do it in upfront. We will do it for the next call, but we don't have it for this one. So just to reiterate what you said, so basically like this personal stories on LinkedIn, right? You just write about some challenges you have, right? But then it's also you write it in a way that it's getting a lot of attention, right? So a lot of people they're clicking on it, they like it, and then you get a lot of new friends requests, right? On LinkedIn, right? I see sometimes you have like I don't know over 500 likes or something on your LinkedIn posts, and
Mhm.
I thought that's a really smart way to yeah to use LinkedIn as a tool to you know kind of like as a free tool to widen your network. You know, I think that's a
Yeah, and
great
I
idea.
got a good friend of mine gave a very nice tip. So he turned out he started out, I don't know what he started out as, but he's a stand-up comedian by now and wrote a book about using humor in basically business and stuff like that. And one of the tips he's having as a stand-up comedian, which I think you can use in business as well and in life in general, is kind of when you're friends and you're having a conversation. What is the conversation? I remember this Francisco, right? And then I went down on Market Street, and then all of a sudden this stuff happened, right? And then oh, the other guy's like, yeah, I also remember happened when I was in New York, blah blah blah, right? This is how a conversation is, right? This is what's going on, and this is what people can relate to. So a very good tip for kind of doing that is to keep for yourself. It's back to kind of documenting or being a little bit structured on things. So keep a story list of what happens to you in life that's worth sharing, and or not worth sharing. That's funny. It's not about whether you think it's worth sharing, but the things that are not only funny but are just like crazy. They're just all of our lives. If you just like look at whatever the outliers up and down list of those stories, it's very easy for you to basically go back to them and then write something about it. That was your thought process around it. Basically work very well for any interaction, and it will also help you when you talk, not only come out of nothing if they say something, but you have a list of things that you actually might be interactive way.
Nice. Okay, so I do one last question. I hear a lot of other questions. I will go over to them, but I think a lot of people don't know that. That's why I will ask it. So you also have like one of the Skype founders and early investors like Morten Lund uh, in your advisory board, right? Like they invested in your company. So how do you get someone like you know like Morten Lund to join your company?
Like everybody wants a trick, right? And I'm afraid that I have to tell you that there's no real trick to it. It's back to
Yeah.
like no silver bullets. So I think it's about some of the things that I had in my presentation. You need to basically talk to enough people, right? And then if you have a story or if you have a vision, especially if you're creating a company or you want to have a project in life that might not even be a company, well, it doesn't matter. If you have a clear vision for that, and if you talk to enough people and tell them that vision, tell them a story about that, it will naturally happen. For me, it happened with Morten. I was at a conference. He was like presenting, talking about things, hundreds of people there, and randomly when he came down from stage, I had the luck to just like be able to say to him, hey, I'm also from Denmark and we're doing this and this. And he was like, okay, very interesting, you know, I'm busy, write me an email, see ya, more or less. And then I was sort of like, okay, I'll write him an email whenever I get to it. I went home and did my Excel list, and like I met him and started thinking about to write an email. And the next day he called me up and said, like, by the way, what you told me yesterday was very interesting. And then we talked for 3 hours. So stuff happens if you talk to enough people, right? And if you tell your story to enough people and your vision, people they love to be on to people that have big visions and drive and adventure they can participate in.
Nice. All right. So now I go to the audience questions, right? So what is your lowest point in your entrepreneurship journey, and how did you overcome it?
Oh man, I have a lot of low points. um, the lowest one, I don't know. There are so many things that has not worked out, right? Like we wanted to IPO a company, and then you know, we were on plans to IPO a company, and then the stock market crashed in 2008, and we had this, like I said, this big Fortune 50 company, and everything was great, and it's going to go roll out worldwide and everything like that. And then they had to change their website, and so many different things. And I think how I overcame it is essentially, I don't know how I did it at the early stages because I didn't really have figured that out yet. But I think overall, the easiest way to look at it is bad things are going to happen. That's a fact. So just accept that this is going to happen, and you cannot control when it happens. Obviously you can do some risk mitigation, stuff like that, but there's not a lot to do. All kind of crazy shit's going to happen. Just accept it, and then you can be down. I think that's also a tip for pro footballers or sport guys in general. You can be down if you lose. You can be super up if you win, but you have like a maximum of 24 hours to have those emotions, and then it's back to work. So it's all about basically then assessing the reality that has now happened, and then putting a new plan in place. And the good thing is, if you have a clear vision about what you want to do, that's driven by kind of the change, like where the world goes in the future, you'll still have kind of that vision to go for, and so basically it'll pull you over there, right? So unless the whole world changes so much that vision is gone, which could happen with some things in COVID, you might want to find a new vision, but okay. Otherwise it's very, very seldom that things change so much that you basically remove the whole vision for what you're doing.
Nice, thanks. So here's a question from Carl. How did you approach bigger organizations when you started and didn't have much tangible results to show?
You fell out for 2 seconds. What? Can you repeat it?
So how did you approach bigger organizations when you started and didn't have much tangible results to show?
Introductions, meet people, introductions, give them a vision, realize vision is, it's back to that, it's not enough, right? So you can essentially think of it, again, you need to, like, if you don't have a lot of tangible results, the only tangible result you have is the vision, right? And your credibility for doing that. And maybe you can remove that as well. So it's just the vision and your energy. The energy they cannot take away, right? So your vision and your energy. And that counts for whatever, 2% or something like that, maybe more. You're up to you. Then you need to talk to 50 people to get somebody that agrees to it, right? Very simple if you look at the conversion. And then you have, then you have a little bit more, then you're up to like 4%, 10%. Then you need to talk to less people to get them to agree to it. So that's a matter of the vision, and your energy is probably the most important. Nobody can take that away from you. So just go ahead with that, and then just talk to enough people to make it happen. And don't be afraid, by the way, to talk to people, because everybody's like, I don't want to burn. If I talk to, like, I don't know, if I talk to this big bank I want to sell something to, then I'm not going to talk to them until I'm ready, super duper ready, because I'm going to burn them. And people don't realize, like, there's like 10,000 people in that bank, and they're like, again, they look at progress, they don't look at statics. So if you come and you say some crazy shit, right, and they're like, oh my God, insane, never ever going to talk to you again, and you come back half a year later and you're like, crazy shit, but now I'm like step 2, right? And they're like, okay, still crazy, but he made a little progress, or she, right? And then you do that every half year, like eventually even if it's the same person, you can never burn people that much.
Yeah, I agree. Great advice. So how did you come up with your story for the first pitches?
What?
So how did you come up with your story for the first pitches you did?
I sat down and I created a presentation which was shit, and then I was lucky to have a guy which was a co-founder from Rheingau, better at PR and storytelling than I was at that stage, and he came up with he was like, we need to, like, you're from Denmark, it's like Danish Dynamite or Vikings or something like that. And then we figured that out. In the story, obviously I put the story in there. I don't know how I came up with the story itself, but it was a collaboration with a guy that had a little bit more kind of storytelling and PR experience, let's say it like that. And then I started to realize over the time, right? And then, like I said, the guy, like the Founder Institute guy where I was pitching at this event, he was like, you need to wear the Viking helmet. And my reaction was like, you fuck, not gonna happen, insane, not gonna happen ever. But it happened, and it was like by total coincidence, and it made me realize, wow, that's actually super powerful. So yeah.
Nice.
Sorry, I'm sure I could not put that finger on the video here, and you're even streaming on Facebook.
It's so good.
Sorry for that.
So what key pieces of feedback or advice helped you along your journey?
You fell out again. Can you repeat?
What key pieces of feedback or advice helped you along your journey?
That's a hard one.
It's a hard one, yeah.
That's a hard one. That's like there's been a lot of I would say probably the story stuff, right? Tell your story. That's the most key advice I can get. I know it's the same thing, but otherwise there's so much. That's a very, very broad question. I don't know.
I mean, maybe you put it before, right? You said there are no silver bullets, right? So
yeah,
it's
that's
almost
for sure.
like there's not one key advice which totally change you, probably, right?
I think actually that's true, and I don't know where, if I even got that advice from somebody or whatever, but that is definitely a key kind of philosophy. I think that at least I have. And you can almost apply that to everything, right? People tend to look for, if you talk to somebody who want to do a project or start a company or something, everybody tends to look for the smartest way to like do it. And typically the smartest way to do it means, how can I do it without I have to kind of do something that's uncomfortable for me, typically including myself, right? And so if you basically remove that whole notion of what is the smartest, realize there is no smartest way, or at least you need to do the work, right? That's it, and you need to do a lot of it. It will simplify a lot of things.
All right, so 2 more questions, then we're done. How do you get your first 5 customers? Can you share the actual story of convincing the first customers, which I think are the most difficult? Did you have to do a lot of hand waving?
What is hand waving? What's that?
It's just that in German it's Klinkenputzen. That's basically, I think, like you need to shake a lot of hands to make it. You meet a lot of people.
Sure.
Hand waving is when you have to pretend that you have functionality that you intend to build, but you don't have yet. So it's kind of a little bit of pretending.
Yes. Yeah. In terms of that, we had absolutely zero functionality. We only did hand waving. Yes, because in the end, and I think that's also now, this must be doesn't matter what company it is, what business it is, even if it's technology, there tends to be a very big focus on product and on technology, right? But that's not what you're selling. Even if you're selling product and technology, that's not what you're selling. You're selling value. So before you even build anything, before you even have a product and stuff like that, you can talk to a customer and say, like, what is your problem and how can I solve that? What is the value that I can give you to solve that problem? So instead of focusing on having the product or technology and stuff like that, you can focus on the actual product and the value, which is the opposite way of what most people do. So yes, we basically, the first customer we got was a cheat. So that was a friend, which you can also always start with, who basically introduced me to another friend, and then I was like, I want to test it out, do it for me, and then they agreed. Of course, you need to like convince them a little bit, but it's easier. And then we knew it worked, and we had something to show in terms of like they also did it. And then the rest was basically cold calls on the phone, just like calling enough that people would do it. And it's all about telling them, this is what we're going to do. The other guys are already doing it. So do you want to be in or not? And it's back to the conversion, right? And initially, all people they see is obviously, in this case, they would see like, what is the vision? What is your energy? And what is the proof points? And we had one other shop that did it. So that's it. And then you need to call X amount to get the second one, and when you have the second one, it's like a little less to get the third one. Still a lot.
Yeah, maybe just to jump in, because I remember that story from you. You told me the story that you always have this like one sales guy who is really good, or saleswoman, sales guy who's really good, and then everyone kind of like followed, right? So maybe you can elaborate a little bit on that.
Yeah, sure. So essentially, obviously, what we did, I went out and I talked to some friends, and I figured out one friend who was willing to help. And then basically I started somehow. I don't even remember where we got number 2 and 3 from, to be honest. But basically, what happened then is I basically created a list of potential customers, and I started calling them. It's like, oh, you want this, and there was big companies, some of them. And some of them were small companies. And then people are like, yeah, sounds interesting. Send me a presentation. I'll do that. And then, I'll call more. And we hired we hired an intern. And then he was sitting next to me to do it as well. And, some hours a day. And we called more merchants. And then we hired a professional sales guy, and he started calling, and that totally didn't work. So we had to kick him back out. We hired another professional sales guy. Also didn't work. And then we kicked him out, and now we're like me and 2 interns. And I think like we did on average like 8 sales a month per person. And then we hired another professional sales guy, and that guy first month he made 42 sales, and he was not a professional. The other guys we hired, they were like super look professional, and this guy was more of a telesales guy. He actually was good at it. He didn't look like anything, but he was really good at it. And what happened next is basically all the interns, something flipped in their mind, and then whoops, they also did 40 a month immediately after, because now they knew it was possible. And it's essentially that's one of the other learnings that I have. It's always dangerous to listen to experts. For example, we took the company and we went from Germany, and we were like, want to launch in other countries. We launched in the UK, so we hired another professional sales guy. And the guy was like, he was making like what it was like half a sale a day or something, and the other guys were doing 2 or 3 a day on average. And he was like, nah, I've been doing this for years. In the UK, it's a completely different market. It's so different, blah, 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 blah. And he's doing that for 2 months. And we were just like, keep going. And then at some point in time, I don't know if we got another guy in or whatever, but or another guy, one of the German guys tried to call the UK, but all of a sudden it worked, and same rate. So there's typically no difference. And the problem is oftentimes that experts will tell you what is possible based on their experiences. And many people tend to focus on their negative experiences, which tells them only what is not possible and not what is possible. And that is essentially, that's a big challenge in many cases. So that's that's my general experience. Focus. Like, I can give another example on that. We were kind of, when we were doing all the selling, we hired 35 people in our cold calling team. We've never done sales before. Started with myself and interns. I'm a fucking like lawyer and like internet marketer or whatever. I don't even know what I am, but I was doing the sales and interns, and then we hired 35 people. And we were kind of, there was another company in town who were basically like had a reputation as like hardcore sales guys, super good, and they were also scaling a lot. They were super good, and they were like poaching people from us, and we were kind of like trying to hire the same kind of people. And like after a year or something like that, we hired one of their guys, and we're like, yeah, now we need to learn how this stuff is going on. And he came in, and he was like, we basically just started from nothing. So we were doing like whatever was mathematically possible. We're like, how many calls can you do a day? How much did it take? Okay, that much. Okay, you do that. So we did on average like 115 calls a day per person, like cold calling. And we got the other guy in, and we're like, so tell us, well, like, what are the tricks? How many calls are you guys doing over at the other company? He's like, 30. We're like, what? So now we got an expert in, and he was like, we did 30 on average. And we're like, we're doing 115. What the fuck? Because we didn't know what we were doing. So we just did it instead of thinking, you can only do 30 because that's what I've done my whole life. I got a little bit sidetracked, I think. But
yeah, nice. yeah. Yeah, no. This time the connection was really good. So I could understand everything. Yeah, that's I think that's a great advice, right? It's always like making the benchmark a bit higher, and then suddenly other people can do also 40 calls, right? That's amazing. Yeah, this is the last question. I think you almost answered it. Can you identify the key team member and the key customers to get you where you are? Can you share a concrete story about them?
To about my company or what?
About the key customers, the most important customers who get you where you are right now. if there's a key, maybe like a story which was a pivotal moment and helped you to make a lot of progress.
I could mention names. I mean, you can look it up. We have big brands on it. I think it's a little bit back to the bullet point, silver bullet kind of thing, right? I think it's way more important as a company to build traction, which means that you kind of need to do a grassroots approach. So you want to build traction, even if it was big companies, like start with little traction, right? So we went for small merchants, and then we just got more and more of them, and naturally they got bigger and bigger, right? So we basically just did cold calling before, right? We did cold calling to merchants with interns. And we had, I don't remember how many we had, 50 or 60 merchants that had signed up. And then randomly, from a cold calling approach, somebody called Playmobil, an intern. And Playmobil was, yeah, we're going to do it. Here, click. And then they signed up. We're like, what the fuck happened? Like out of nothing, right? Whereas if we would have taken the approach of like, we're going to go for Playmobil and do all that stuff, what I've always seen is like, then it's much harder to do because you need to do all of the convincing. So I think it's much more important to kind of build traction from the ground up, because it will naturally turn the bigger companies or the companies that are harder to basically, or just behind because they have another strategy or whatever, they will see you and they'll start, oh, well, maybe this is interesting, and then they'll think, and then it'll take 3 years, but then they'll do it, instead of you calling them immediately and having that as a strategy and following them around for 3 years. Depends on your strategy. So I don't have really, I would say it's not really about that. It's really about kind of, yeah, maybe it was that. I mean, Playmobil was nice. Not now we could put a logo on there and the interns were happy and everything was fine, but it was like all built by traction essentially.
Yeah, nice, awesome. So Stefan, I think I already saw in the chat for a lot of people that was like super helpful. There are a lot of really good comments. So thanks again for taking your time. And I would give over to basically to Yip, who want to do like a short meditation, right? To end the session.
Not at all. I wanted everybody to invite everybody to take a minute just to review what you heard today in the past 45 minutes and type it down. So in that way, you know, you manifest or get it clearer into your memory. And that's about it. If like take a moment, click on the mentee survey and write down what you took away for yourself. And that way you don't forget. And in the end, we have a collective dashboard of what we took away from Stefan's wonderful sharing. Thank you very much, Stefan.
You're welcome. Anybody who wants to send their notes to me, I would love to see that. I have no clue what's coming across on the other side, so I would love to see what people really take away. So I would love to get those. If anybody dares to do that or wants to do that, it would be great.
Does the survey work for everyone? Can you just try it out right now? And we can share the live results because we still have like 2 minutes or 3 minutes left, Stefan, if that's fine for you.
Yeah, sure.
So click on the link, everybody, and then just type in, and I can see if I can share the live results. I'm not sure. I'm not seeing anything coming in. So I'm just wondering if this link is not working for you guys or.
No, I'm just still typing. Like
Okay, cool. Thank you. The link is here in the menti.com.
Yeah, but Yip, maybe if it's not working, we can also send over the feedback to Stefan.
Yeah.
Let's see if it's. Yeah, I think like the participants can still fill it out, and then we would just send it over to Stefan. All right. So Stefan, I also make like a. I also copied the chat and we'll send it to you, so you can also see there was a lot of great feedback. So again, warm round of applause. Thanks again, right?
Woo! And thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Stefan. Then let's wrap it up here, right? Take care.
Cool. Take care. Thanks.